Okay, so let's do a tomato review on the Speckled Roman. Now I have grown this in the past several times, and I do grow it every year, but I haven't had a whole lot of luck in the last few years, only because the blight out here has been getting so bad that it's really hard for me to grow any tomatoes at all. Really, at this point, I should just stop growing tomatoes for a while. And one of the problems I'm having with that, not to get off track, is that, like for example, you see all these flowers, where you see all them flowers, how they're rotting and dying like that? That's from blight. That's late blight getting on my flowers and killing my flowers. So I don't get a whole lot of luck lately in the last few years with tomatoes. No matter what I do to the soil and no matter where I plant them, the blight comes in and wipes them out. So I may have to just refrain from doing videos on tomatoes for a while until the blight kind of dies away. But nevertheless, I do have some tomatoes that are still doing pretty good on the Speckled Roman, and I have two there, and I know there's more green ones in there. There's a bunch of more green ones. These are another tomato, Rio Grande tomato. That's a totally different tomato, but those in the back, the red ones, those are the Speckled Romans, and we're going to pick those. Wow, that's a nice big one, actually. Got a couple of big ones on there, and I do have a few more on there. So let's take a look at it, and that way we can get a good view of it. Let me get out of the way of the noise. So you can see here's what it looks like. Now this tomato has this beautiful striping, dark orange over the light orange. It's a beautiful tomato. They normally don't get points that look like that, though they do, and the shapes can vary quite a bit on these tomatoes. But the majority of the tomatoes, if you get a really good bumper crop of these, most of them are going to have this little nipple on the bottom. Is going to be like a little tail. It's not going to be like it looks like a belly button in Audi. It's not. They don't normally do that. This one did. This one also got kind of on the wide side as well. And it kind of has the Audi, but it got kind of wide. Now, they do vary. These tomatoes have a lot of different shapes that come out of them, but the primary shape that's going to come out is going to generally be like a plum tomato or, that kind of a tomato. And you're going to get this little tail that comes off the bottom. And that's very characteristic of this tomato. So it's quite a beautiful tomato. And let me see if I can show you what the plant looks like a little bit before I bring you in to do the taste test. And you can see here's the leaf pattern. Now this is the weeping, this is a regular leaf tomato, but I call it a weeping regular leaf because the leaves like to hang down like this. So this tomato profile has that kind of leaf. In other words, it's not a leaf like this. It doesn't grow like that. It grows just what you see here, kind of like a weeping willow. And it likes to grow and hang down. That's the profile of the plant. It's an indeterminate tomato, and it's a very productive tomato. If you have a good tomato year, you'll get a lot of these. I had one year where I probably got 30 of these tomatoes out of one season off of one plant. One or two plants, whatever was in the pot. But that's a lot of tomatoes to get off of these. Now, if you don't get disease, it'll produce like crazy. So definitely worth a go, even if you're just going to grow them for the beauty of them. I mean, I'm more infatuated with the look of the tomato more than anything, but definitely worth growing. So why don't we bring this inside and we will cut it open and do a taste test. Alright, so this is a tomato review for the Speckled Roman. Now, I have grown this for many years, and each year it's really up to each year. It really depends on your level of blight and your rain and your weather and your humidity. It's really kind of subject to that. And some years I've done really good where I've gotten 24 of these tomatoes off of my plant. Other years, like this year, I'm lucky to get a half dozen out of them. So that's fine. I can still do a review with it, and I do have several plants growing, and maybe I'll get a late season harvest as well out of it. But this tomato is usually a pretty good producer, and it's a really good tasting tomato for the most part. This is one of the first tomatoes I started growing when I moved up here into Pennsylvania almost 10 years ago. So let me give you a better look at it. And this is generally what it looks like. Now, I did point out earlier in the video that this tail is more of a point for the most part, but this year it kind of grew like a nose on it instead, which is kind of weird. This one kind of got full-bodied. This is very uncommon. You don't normally see them get this big and round, but I guess occasionally they do. But most of the ones I get are usually shaped like this. Okay, and that's usually the shape that I get. Now, we'll cut this one open and show you the inside. Now you can see how meaty that is on the inside. This is a very meaty tomato. It's generally a pretty good juicy tomato, and usually with this tomato it normally has a pretty good amount of sweetness. Now I didn't check it yet with the bricks, but we're gonna. But I do want to say that this tomato can generally be used in almost any dish. It's not generally considered a paste tomato, though it can be a paste tomato. So let's do a bricks on it. And nice and juicy. Very, very thick and meaty tomato. It's running at 5, so not a lot of sugar in it. So, but again, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be sweet. If it's running at like a 5 on the bricks and it tastes sweet, that means it's lower in mineral content. Sometimes the mineral content can be higher or lower, causing that reading to go up or down with your sugar flavor. So I know that my mineral contents are going to be high in my soils because I planted them all in super soil. So there's a good chance that it's generally not going to be too sweet this year. So let's take a slice out of it. See what it tastes like. Has a very nice tomato flavor. Sweetness was a little low this year. I'd say on the sweetness, probably about 25. And the tangy was about 30. So a little more in the tangy, light in the sweetness. But overall, the whole effect of the tangy and sweet was generally kind of low in general. But it does have a nice tomato flavor now. So you got a really good tomato flavory taste on there. It hangs out in the back of your tongue. I really like this tomato a lot. Though I would have preferred to have a little more sweetness this year. It just seems like most of my tomatoes weren't producing as much sugar as I would have liked to have them produce sugar. Now, I'll cut another piece off of this. And that's the inside of that little nose on the bottom. There's the nose right there. Just a big piece of meat. Again, the same thing, not bad at all, just lower on the sugar. Skins are a little on the thick side, but they are chewable. They're not getting stuck in your throat. Let's cut this one in half. Now that one looks like a beefsteak tomato to me. But it's not. It's actually this tomato. What kind of tomato is this? I think it's considered a, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's considered a, what they call a pendant tomato. You got pear tomatoes, plum tomatoes. This isn't really a plum tomato. It's actually considered a pendant tomato, which is not very common. There are not as much of those tomatoes out there. So I think that's what it is. Let me try a piece of that and see if there's any difference in flavor. Much more sweetness. That one, I'd say the sweetness on that one came up to about 30, and the tangy part was about 30, so it's a pretty good balance, but the whole level of sweet and tangy was lower on the whole overall scale. Really not bad at all. That one had some sugar in it, that one. Wow. That one tastes really, really nice. Perfect balance on the sweetness. Perfect balance on the tangy part. We put a little salt on that, see if that brings out any other flavors. Very nice tomato. Highly recommended tomato. Again, I've been growing this tomato for years. Some years I skip in between it because I'm just doing so many other varieties. I just simply can't grow every single tomato. But when I do come back to this tomato, I'm always pleasantly pleased and surprised. It's a very gorgeous looking tomato, and I definitely highly recommend this. That's it. That's really all I can say about the Speckled Roman Tomato. It is a lycopersicum tomato. As you've seen in the other earlier video, it is a regular leaf, but it's what I refer to as the weeping willow leaf. It kind of weeps like a weeping willow. So it is kind of like that. But outside of that, it's pretty much everything is the same. So that's it. That's your tomato review for the Speckled Roman. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.